Good morning, everyone. I'm Jill Huerta, Executive Director of the Center for Graduate Life, and I'd like to welcome you to our 5th week of our Accelerate to Industry series. We are about halfway through right now. It's hard to believe, but we are. And today, I'm thrilled to welcome Cardinal Innovations Healthcare to talk with you about a very timely topic, working remotely. Cardinal Innovations Healthcare provides managed healthcare plans to help people with complex needs access services across several counties in North Carolina. A few words about logistics today. We are, as many of you know, because you've attended many of these, we are now on the stage of Hop-In, where our presenters will give their presentation. During that time, we invite you to send in messages or questions using the chat feature, and we'll be monitoring that. When they wrap up the presentation, we will go to session rooms, and you can reach those by clicking on sessions at your left, and you will see where you can click to go to the Q&A, and that will allow a little bit more intimate discussion in the session room. So let me introduce today's speakers. We have Amy Kazmierczak, who is Chief People Officer at Cardinal Innovations Healthcare. She has 25 years experience in HR across multiple industries, and that should be very important to you all because you're very much a multidisciplinary group of students. We also have Angela Genaro-Ruilova, who is Director of Talent Management and also has over 20 years experience developing and deploying talent. And we have Jamie Martin, Manager of Talent Acquisition, who has seen Cardinal Innovations Healthcare grow from 350 to almost 900 employees. So thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to be here today and deliver some professional development content to our students. And without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Amy, and let you share your screen.
Thanks, Jill. Appreciate that. All right, bear with me, all. I'm going to put the slides on. Oops, let's see. Share. Oh. Okay. Let's see. Somebody's going to have to let me know.
We can see your slides, Amy.
Is this better?
That's perfect.
Okay, so you can see my slides.
Yes.
Wonderful. Great. All right. Well, welcome everyone to this session. Again, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about our experiences in working in this remote environment and things to think about as you go on your job search for your next career move, and things to think about in the research process of the organization, the interview process, and then how you onboard and get up to speed. All right, so again, kind of from our agenda today, we'll talk a little bit about us, a little bit about our experiences in this remote world, and kind of what the first 90 days looks like, and then we'll have time for a Q&A. And there's my dog barking. So that's what happens in this remote world, all kinds of distractions. Jill already introduced the team here today and gave a little bit on our backgrounds. I'm very excited to have Jamie and Angela here with me today and as a member of my team. We are a 25-person strong HR team for Cardinal Innovations. And like Jill said, we have tons of experience on our team and lots of different backgrounds, which makes it a really great team to be part of. We support an organization of about 910 people, and we provide diversity and inclusion support, comp and benefits, talent acquisition and management, learning and development, and we have HR business partners. So again, we kind of provide the full suite of support for the organization. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Cardinal and what we do. And as part of your job search, it's super important to define the kind of organization that you want to be part of. Do your research on, what do the organizations do? What is their mission? Who are their customers, or what do they make? And again, does that align with what's a priority for you? If it's a place you really want to join because it provides you the opportunity to grow and develop, does it match your values and what you want to do? Does it provide growth and development? Where is it? What's the location? Pay, what is your compensation opportunity? And, what future opportunities are there? So all those things are super important. And as much as you can dig to find that information, if you know someone who might work there, if you can get some feedback from someone, that's all the better. So who are we? Cardinal Innovations, we are a specialty health plan, and we are a plan designed to help coordinate care for North Carolinians with very complex behavioral support needs. When I talk about our members, we focus on specialty populations, so individuals with complex needs that include mental illness, substance use disorders, and intellectual and development disabilities. Our mission is to improve the health and wellness of our members and their families. That's what we do every day. We have about 825,000 members, and 465,000 of those are Medicaid recipients, and the rest are non-Medicaid state-funded recipients. So that's the population that we provide services to. As I talk about our members, we also have a network of providers. So we coordinate care for these members through over 1,000 specialized providers. They can be therapists, hospitals, social workers, and other support services. So again, we take care of members and we coordinate care through a network of providers to enable the care that these folks need in particular. Another important piece to understand as you do your research around the organization you want to be part of is to understand kind of how is the company run? Who are they accountable to? What are the objectives of the company and the goals that the either board of directors, shareholders expect from the organization. So, is it a public company that's accountable to a board of directors and shareholders? Is it a private company run by an owner who maybe have very specific objectives, or a private equity owned organization, or government run agency? This has an impact on how the organization is run, what's expected of the employees, and what kind of goals and metrics are measured. We're a quasi-government agency, and we have a very complex structure for governance. We report to a board of directors that guides our goals and accountabilities and decisions. But as this slide shows, we have a very complex network of other constituents and influencers that we're accountable to. So we provide very localized support and care in 20 counties across North Carolina. And all those counties have commissioners and all kinds of elected officials, right? And they have priorities for the members that reside in their counties and the kind of care and services they need. So they have opinions on what they need from Cardinal. We also have state-run agencies like the Department of Social Services. And again, every county's different elected officials, they have expectations for their members. So again, it's pretty complicated. We have a lot of people who expect a lot of things from us, and we have to coordinate coordinate our priorities and our care based on all of these expectations, and again, deliver according to those priorities. So it can get complicated, and in many organizations it can as well. And it's good to have kind of an understanding of how that works, so you know what is expected and kind of who the decision makers are. As I said, we are focused locally and in the communities in 20 counties in North Carolina. We take a person-centered approach. It's a philosophy of how we deliver care, and it's based on that member. What does the person need? And then we coordinate that care. We are a not-for-profit managed care organization, and we are one of the largest specialty health plans in the company. We are coordinators of care, not providers. We do not provide services as Cardinal. We coordinate services for all of our members. How do we work internally? We have many departments that are set up to support these members, things including call centers. So we do run a 24/7 hotline for crisis for any of our members to call at any time, and we will support them and coordinate care. We have a big team of care managers or care coordinators who are out in our communities working directly one-on-one with members to help coordinate their care. And then we have functions like quality and utilization management to measure the services that they're getting, to ensure that they're getting quality services from providers. And if they're not, we work with providers on what those expectations are. And sometimes we have to remove a provider from our network if they're not providing quality care for our members. And that's not always an easy thing to do. And of course, outside of all of these care functions, we have our back office support organization as well, like finance, like IT, HR, legal, government relations. So we have all of those functions as well that help support our departments that are providing care or managing our providers, and it makes the whole organization run. So again, kind of what do we do? What does Cardinal do? How do we coordinate care? Well, we focus on, again, 3 key areas: mental health, substance use, or intellectual and development disabilities, individually, one-on-one, and helping to care for those members. But we also provide a lot of community support. We run wellness centers in many of our communities where we put on programming and training and education on all kinds of topics that can help these members in their daily lives manage challenges that they have or gain education on a lot of different life skills. Again, I mentioned we have over 800,000 individuals that we care for and a large provider network. We do payment authorization as well. So we validate those services that our members get, and we make payments on behalf of the Medicaid or state-funded services. Again, mental health services are things from inpatient to outpatient treatments, therapies, support groups, and like I said, community education and forums. Substance use treatments are things, again, inpatient and outpatient, as well as peer groups, peer programs, and even opioid-specific treatments. And for our intellectual and developmental disability members, we do a lot of care for them, even relieving their current caregiver of the day-to-day responsibilities. So providing additional support, because that's a heavy lift when you're a caregiver for someone who has a disability. And we help parents and other caregivers providing additional support in the home or in other locations and services. And we really work hard to enable this population to gain skills, whether it be to get a position, a job somewhere, or even live on their own, but do it in a way that's supported and that they get all the support they need to actually live a successful life. So we do a lot of training and education, as I mentioned, because this population has a full spectrum of needs, and it's not just a behavioral health issue. It's a full integrated care need for these members to be successful every day. So again, while we focus on their behavioral needs, we also work to provide integrated care on their emotional well-being, their physical well-being, spiritual, financial. It's the whole person care that's really important, because when one thing is off, the whole person is off. And so we're moving more and more. There's transformation happening in this space. I think you may have heard the term Medicaid transformation. We are in that phase right now. The state of North Carolina is going through a multi-year managed care transformation to move to being able to provide fully integrated care for these members. So again, today we focus primarily on their behavioral health needs. In the future, we will also be coordinating physical health need and pharmacy need for these same members so that we can coordinate all their care in a whole person way and not piecemeal it, because that makes it very difficult for that member. We all know managing the healthcare space is super complicated today. I know it's complicated for me. And folks that have challenges or they don't have access to resources, it can be extremely complicated. So our goal in the future is to be able to coordinate care for them and services for all of their needs. Our CEO likes to say it's about connecting the mind to the body and the whole person to the community. And all of that needs to be in sync for someone to be successful as a contributing individual in society. And that's our goal. So as I mentioned, we focus on 20 counties across the state of North Carolina today, and there are 7 LMEMCOs in North Carolina, so organizations like ours that cover the other counties across the state of North Carolina. Cardinal Innovations is the biggest LMEMCO in North Carolina, and we cover the most members. How do we get our funding? Our funding comes from the state through Medicaid programs as well as other state and federal funds. And as I mentioned, one of the most important things we do is we are on point 24/7, 365 days a year to help any of our members when they need help. Crisis can happen at any time, and we're there at the end of the phone to help them and do whatever they need at that moment. We actually this year launched a new and easier way to contact Cardinal. It's called Starstar Ask. They just need to have that in their phone, and they can be on call with one of our care coordinators in minutes. So again, we're pretty proud of this. We really intervene when members need us quite often, and with really skilled care coordinators at the end of the line. So why Cardinal? Again, it's super important to really understand kind of what you're looking for in an organization and make sure that matches your personal mission, what you care about. What does that organization do? And, is it something that you can get behind? Because you want to be proud of the organization you're with and their brand, right? You want to have a good experience as an employee. So in Cardinal, again, we're really proud of our mission. If mission and serving others is a passion of yours, this might be an organization for you. We are very mission driven around our members and their care every day. We have direct impact to our local communities. And if you live and work in North Carolina, you can impact the people that are around you every day. We provide continuing professional education and development for not only our members and their caregivers, but also providers and also our employees. So we are constantly educating around changes in care programs for this population, also changes in legislature that happen, lots of rules, regulations, laws change that impact this population and payment of services. And again, it's our job to educate when that happens. And then for our own employees, we provide ongoing certification, credentialing, and professional development. We're in an industry that's transforming. Healthcare is going through huge transformation, as I think you all probably know. And if you like that, if you like to drive change and influence it, and hopefully influence it for the better, again, this might be an industry for you. And of course, we work hard to provide good benefits for our employees, really good time off programs. As we know, your own mental health, physical well-being, and time to regroup is super important. We give volunteer hours, and we have good pay and career development. So again, those are things that you want to make sure you explore as you look for an organization, and make sure it matches what you care about. So what's the impact of the remote world on our organization and, on organizations in general? So once you identify some of the either industries or organizations you want to target, it's also a good idea now, given the situation we're in, to ask about how things are working in this current remote COVID-19 world, because every organization is going through major change on how they operate, and no one planned for it. This hit us all overnight, and I coordinate with a lot of my fellow HR colleagues at other organizations, and we talk about what's happening at your organization. What are you doing? What have you tried that works for your employees? Because we're all figuring this out at the same time. I'm sure you've read a ton of articles on LinkedIn or other publications about what organizations are doing. And you know what? We're learning as we go. So it'd be good to ask, as you talk to recruiters, how are they working? What is the situation? Are they going back into an office anytime soon? If you take a role that is customer facing, or you need to be out in an environment or in a big facility, what are they doing to ensure that you're safe? Are they providing equipment, PPE, those kinds of things? The feedback has been very wide and varied, as you can imagine. Some of the feedback's been super positive. I mean, we've had some of our employees say, wow, being remote, I've gotten a lot more done. I feel more productive. I don't have a 1 hour commute each way to the office. So I feel like I get more done, and I'm working really well this way. And other people have said, I live alone, I'm on Zoom calls all day, and I'm getting kind of lonely. I need some human interaction, and I'm struggling with being remote. So the feedback's all over. So it's important, again, to understand how the organization you're talking to is working, and what has been their experiences so far, and what are they doing to help their employees through this time. So we've all had to adjust. Like I said, this is new, and some things that you want to kind of think about or add into your question list, I guess, would be employee safety. As I mentioned, how are they keeping the employee base safe? What are they doing to make sure that if you're in an office, that you're doing the right kind of social distancing or have safety protocols, or if you're in the community, the same thing. And how are they driving, collaboration and innovation if everybody's remote? That's been a challenge, right? There's so much research that has said, wow, great things happen when people are, working together and collaborating in a room and talking, or even just, connecting one-on-one. And how is that working in a remote environment? And then what are the interdependencies you may have in your job, and how do you get connected to people in the organization if you're all remote and you've never met them before? What are they doing to help you build relationships and get to know people in a pure remote environment? And then new decision points that have come up for employers, and again, for job seekers alike, is what kind of technology do I have, and does the organization have in need? I'll tell you, for us, it escalated our level of technology needs really quickly. To be able to get everyone remote and have good access and the tools they need. Wow. Overnight, our IT department went on overdrive, having to make sure that all of this could work effectively. So what is the organization doing to provide you good equipment and the support services that you may need, or the ergonomic tools that you may need in your home, if that's the case? And then how are they managing productivity, again, connection and engagement and development? So again, a host of questions that were kind of there in the past, but these have taken an elevated stance right now and are super important as long as we continue to work in this environment. And none of us really know how long this is going to be. And for some organizations, they've decided this is going to be the way they work forever. So it's really changed the dynamic, and I think you're entering the workplace at a really interesting and groundbreaking time. So now I'm going to toss it over to Jamie, and she's going to talk about now how the interview process goes and some of our lessons learned in landing a job virtually. Jamie?
Thanks, Amy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
No? Oh, good. Okay, well, we are working on a little bit of a delay, so bear with me if there is a little bit of silence in between question or answering and me talking again. So we've covered who Cardinal is and an overview of the impact of the remote world and what that looks like today. Many organizations are extending their remote work, or they've decided to permanently work remotely, as some of us have heard about those organizations. So now that we're living in a remote world, what does that look like about landing a new job or starting a new career? So we'll talk about that and the best approach to landing a job virtually. So a couple things in mind as Amy has shifted over to this slide. We, Cardinal, have been hiring virtually since March, so the past 7 months and counting. We've been using Microsoft Teams for our virtual interviewing with between the hiring managers and the top candidates. We've recently implemented a video screening tool, which came just in time before the pandemic. So for this tool, it's used as a pre-screening tool. So before passing along the candidate to the hiring manager, this is a one-way recorded video where there's a question on the screen and you either have an unlimited amount of takes or a capped amount of takes to record your answer to that specific question. And it usually ranges anywhere from 7 to 10 questions per role. So I only describe how this works to provide a heads up if you too are invited to do a pre-recorded video screen. So as we review these video screens, I want to ensure you guys don't make some of the same mistakes as others have. And this slide is titled, "Are You There?" Because we want to ensure there is the appropriate lighting during your video screen or video interviewing. So an example on on our very first video screen that we reviewed, we were very excited to view it. When we clicked on it to watch, unfortunately, the candidate was outside and the sun was taking up half of their face and we could only see half of their face. So it's not the ideal situation. We definitely want to see your full face. This is also true for video interviews. We've used, as I said earlier, Microsoft Teams. So during the process of virtual interviewing, we don't only want to see half of your face, and we certainly don't want the hiring managers to walk away only remembering half of your face. Next slide. So next up, location, location, location. So your background and your location are so important during the video screens and video interviews. I recently conducted a video interview with someone who had all sorts of knickknacks and pictures in their background. I couldn't help but ask about them to learn a little bit about it, and they proceeded to describe those things and how they had collected them over the years. However, I was easily distracted by all that was going on in the background, and we only had 30 minutes to conduct this interview. I also have 2 examples from our video screening tool. This is not made up. You guys, it's really fun being in recruiting. We definitely have a good time amongst ourselves. One example is a candidate recorded their video screen in their car. That is not recommended. And then another candidate proceeded to complete the video screen in multiple locations. So they were answering one question inside of their house, and then another one, all of a sudden they were outside. Maybe they were trying to keep it interesting, but there was certainly a distraction. And although the candidates weren't automatically disqualified for their creative backgrounds or superpower of appearing in multiple locations, it was still distracting. We're easily distracted, and HR or the hiring manager might not grasp the full answer to the questions you're being asked. So while we in HR might have time to review over the video screen and pre-screening again, the hiring managers do not. So we want to make sure you guys are grabbing the attention and keeping their attention. You can do that by maintaining that consistent background. Next slide. As many of you probably guessed, the title of this slide, Can You Hear Me Now?, is about your sound and your connection. This can certainly be frustrating on both sides, so let's be sure that we're testing the internet connection and your sound and the acoustics even in preparation for your video screen or your video interview. You can test with a friend, or you can even ask the recruiter if they'd be open to testing with you. We get a lot of these requests, and we're more than happy to ensure the interview is going smoothly and that technology is one less thing you have to worry about during that stressful time. So another tip also is to exchange phone numbers before the interview. If the recruiter isn't open to sharing the interviewer's number, then make sure you're getting their number to call or text in case there is any difficulties. I do have a funny story on this one. A hiring manager shared with me apparently the candidate's sound wasn't working. So the hiring manager actually asked for their number within the Microsoft Teams chat, and he ended up putting himself on mute and had the candidate, their sound wasn't working anyway, but put them on mute, and they were on video but talking through the phone. I thought this was genius, but although there was a little bit of a lag, and they eventually ended up going just to phone, but I thought it was a good idea. Next slide. So if we can see you and you're in the right location and we can hear you, then we want to make sure that we're also presenting our best selves. Yes, it's virtual and we might be in yoga pants with a top and a suit jacket, but as far as you know, they could be wearing a suit. That's all you know. So let's bring our best selves to the interview and dress as if you were going in for the interview as well. So story time on this, real life example. I had a candidate laying down on their bed while recording their video screen. I'll leave that at that. The second video screen, again, I'm not making this stuff up. A candidate clearly did not have a shirt on. I would have liked to ask him, hey, would you come to an interview without a shirt on? So don't be these examples that are shared what not to do. Because I mean, it certainly makes this presentation interesting, but we will move on and make sure we're presenting our best selves forward. Next slide. So this slide is titled, It's Better to Know Than to Assume. So do your research. Don't be that candidate that confuses one organization with another. And I say that because candidates often confuse Cardinal Innovations with Cardinal Health. And while we're very close in name, we are very different companies. Cardinal Health is publicly traded and a global organization, whereas we are not. We're just in North Carolina, state and federal funded. So close name, but very different. What really puts a smile on our face, and specifically mine, is when a candidate has done their research and understands how important the mission of our organization is to us and finds a way to relate that back to themselves. We are a mission-driven organization, and a good culture fit for us is a candidate who wants meaningful work. For you, you want to ensure your values align with the organization's values, and you want to make sure that your next career move is as beneficial for the organization as it is for yourself, and rewarding and meaning for you as well. And my last slide. So next slide, sorry, Amy. Yep. So being a mission-driven organization and having that plug leads me into this snapshot of our careers and culture page. If you feel so inclined, check it out. We are always hiring. right now, based off of the review of the attendees, I saw, some IT folks. We certainly have plenty of IT roles open and still coming, and compliance roles. And then, of course, we have our clinical side as well. So see if this type of organization is something that aligns with your values, a place where you would feel welcomed and included and fulfilled. So we certainly find that in Cardinal, and personally, Cardinal means a lot because of the mission of the organization. It means a lot to me, and it not only hits close to home, but it certainly hits close to my heart. And I definitely love working for this organization and look forward to finding candidates who are also a good culture fit and filling our open positions. So that concludes my presentation. Up next is Angela to discuss the first virtual 90 days.
Thank you, Jamie and Amy both. I am so privileged to work with you both and to share a team with each of you. Great tee up, Amy, on what we do as an organization and how we do it, and the privilege we have to impact people in our community. I agree with you, Jamie. It is really a special place to be able to work and grow and, in my case, develop others and build out programs that help develop others. So as Amy mentioned, when you're doing your research on the front end and looking for an organization that's the right fit for you, really look at the values of the organization and how they compare to your values to make sure that there's a match there. And then, of course, as Jamie mentioned, as you're going through the interview process, interviewing is two ways. We're interviewing candidates all the time to see if there's a fit, and you should be interviewing the organization as well to make sure that it's a fit for you. And she gave some great tips on how to do that professionally in our virtual environment and how to be prepared. And so what I want to take the next few minutes to really focus on now are those first virtual 90 days. You've been hired, you've done your research, you made the right decision, you accepted the offer, you've got a start date, you're starting to get emails now to attend orientation, and there's a few links probably flying your way to complete paperwork or to get online for virtual orientation. You may be receiving equipment, hardware equipment from your organization to get plugged in with IT and get set up. And so there's a lot of excitement and anticipation, and there's probably some nervousness on, gosh, how's this going to go? I haven't met anybody that I'm going to work with in person or face to face. I personally have had the opportunity to onboard 2 new people onto my team in the last several months. I think I have both of our new teammates started early August, and then one of them maybe early September. So we've had a little bit of practice in this area, getting through the interview process, and then through the first 90 days, right at the tail end of the first 90 days for one of our employees, one of our teammates that you'll hear from in a little bit via video. And so some things to think about as the excitement and anticipation builds around your first 90 days as a virtual employee. What if you aren't super tech savvy, or you haven't used the same programs your new organization is using? That can be a little bit nerve-wracking, a little flustering. You're worrying about the self-guided technology setup. You've got a box that arrives on your porch, and you've got all this equipment that you gotta kind of figure out, okay, I'm my own tech administrator now, so let's see how these things all kind of connect. You've got the camera meet and greets probably scheduled out a few weeks. And then you probably really need to just consider a healthy dose of patience and humor as you practice getting connected over the first several days and weeks. As Amy mentioned, when we first were launched into this work from home environment, boy, did we have a crash course in Microsoft Teams. We had just barely started kind of scratching the surface on using that and getting comfortable, and then all of a sudden was like, okay, this is the only way we're going to be able to be connected. And so we had to teach each other how to use this application online. So it was an online virtual learning together and telling people where to click and what to look for. And as you can imagine, it was a little complicating and frustrating for sure, but we got through it together. And hopefully some of you have already had some experience in some of these platforms, whether it's Microsoft Teams or Zoom or I don't know, Ring Central, GoToMeeting. I think I've got like 3 or 4 other ones on my desktop, because depending on who you're doing business with and who you're talking to, everybody seems to be using a different platform. So the technology learning is constant. And so don't feel like you're the only one is really, the point there. What about, how do you make a good first impression if your internet is spotty? We've all had internet problems, whether it's your personal internet, whether it's the modem, whether it's, the bandwidth in your neighborhood, whether it's, some of the equipment you're using, what have you. Trying to make a first impression when your sound and video is sort of clicking in and out feels very stressful. But again, you're not the only one in this environment. You're not the only one trying to figure out how to get good internet. I'll share a personal story. A couple of weeks ago, I was working away, trying to really pound some things out and get some things wrapped up for the week, and deep in thought, and trying to, get some thoughts out in an email. And then all of a sudden, like total loss of internet, total loss of connection. And of course I'm upset, and I'm like, what's going on? I'm yelling downstairs to my husband, who is also, trying to work. And again, you are your own IT administrator working from home. So you've got to get really good at kind of just figuring out how this stuff works. And so you've got to figure out all your stuff at home first, so that you can do all the troubleshooting before you call IT. And what had happened, I looked out my window and saw the lawn care folks right out there, and wouldn't you know it, they cut my internet line. The fiber wasn't buried deep enough. And so literally had no internet into the house, and had to just, figure out a game plan. So luckily my parents lived down the street, went to their house, worked from their house for a couple of days until we got internet back running. But those are the kind of things that you don't always have in your control. And there may be a storm, there may be a tree down. And so just staying calm, and again, healthy dose of patience and humor when things get a little frustrating is really helpful. What about, when was the last time you were expected to get to know the culture, a brand new culture that you're entering, but you couldn't grab lunch with a coworker? Sometimes the best part of starting a new job is getting to know your peers, getting to know your colleagues, hanging out for coffee or lunch, and sort of learning the culture by listening to stories and listening to how other people react, and seeing body language. And so how do you do that when you're working virtually? It's a lot more deliberate. You can certainly still do the coffees and the lunches, but it's a little bit more deliberate. So something to think about as you start to onboard into your new role. How are you gonna, one, be prepared for some of these things, and two, what's your contingency plan if things are a little bit bumpy? And then finally, how do you observe social settings and body language to pick up on tone and formality expectations? Depending on what level you're coming in into the organization, you may need some exposure or awareness of how different leadership levels interact and how they work, and how formal you need to be when addressing the CEO, or when at the table with other executives, and how do they interact with each other. And And when you're in a virtual environment, it's a little, not impossible, but it's a little more difficult to, see some of that early on and be sort of plugged into some of those nuances and idiosyncrasies early on. So think about how you're going to do that. How are you going to deliberately put yourself in some situations so that you aren't caught off guard, or so that you can pick up on the right tone and formality, and so you start meeting those expectations sooner than later. I've got one more slide, and then we're going to see a video from one of the teammates that I had the opportunity to onboard almost 90 days ago. And so here's the tips to some of the issues that are presented in the previous slide. Number one, we talked about being tech savvy. Find a guru on your team that knows the platforms and applications that you're using. Find someone that knows those things really well and practice with them. I think Jamie may have mentioned practice before the scheduled call if you have to dial in early, and then do sort of a debrief at the end if you need to, and say, gosh, I couldn't figure out why my speaker wasn't working, or where do I need to click for this, or take some extra time before and after meetings to practice the technology with someone that you think is really good at it and can give you some guidance there. Two, learning the culture. This is where you really have an opportunity to ask good questions. It doesn't matter if you're in person or not. When you're getting to know the culture, you can ask about meeting norms, and you can ask about lingo. You can find out if there are if there's a coffee break call, or how was your weekend time set up, where folks spend some casual time just sort of catching up. That's where you can observe some tone and language choices and make notes on what you need to have maybe translated later. One example is our HR group, our broad HR group. We have a call on Monday mornings, and it's just a weekend catch up. So anybody who is available and interested can dial in and just chat about the weekend, because we used to run into each other, right, on Monday morning, and we used to be able to say, what did you do this weekend? How was that trip you had planned? How was the birthday party? And just sort of keep up on each other's personal lives a little bit. And so since we don't have that opportunity to just run into each other, we have a deliberate time set up where we can still make sure that we're staying connected on a personal level as well. So there may be opportunities where you can set that up, or they may already exist on your team or other teams, so that you have a chance to kind of get to know folks and get to know a little bit more about the culture. Some other questions that you can ask, in a little bit more formal way of getting to know the culture. You can start to ask, how is success rewarded? What kind of things are measured, and how do we know if we are on the right track? What do leaders do to support their teams? You want to know, how accessible are leaders when you're asking for guidance or advice. You can ask, how does the behavior of the leader at the company reflect, your organization's values? This is a good way to understand, sort of levels of accountability and how are leaders behaving, and how are people observing that. And then maybe another question might be, how do your teams compete or collaborate? That's an important part of culture, understanding how folks kind of get along and make decisions. What's valued more? Is it attention to detail, or is it sort of pragmatism? Do they go by the 80-20 rule? Some of these questions are really helpful, because you may be coming from a totally different culture in terms of a different organization, and you may have that expectation in your mind going into a new organization. And so sometimes just stepping back and asking those questions helps you compare what you're used to and gets you set up to be successful quicker in a new environment. So those are just a few examples. Three, again, back to the good first impression, Jamie had some amazing examples of what people actually have done in their interview, and thinking that that was, that was okay. Just because we're in a virtual environment doesn't automatically mean casual environment. There are certainly times where, I'm going to show up on camera in, something more casual, maybe even a hat and a sweatshirt if it's chilly. But you've got to get to know the environment first, get to know the culture, understand if that's something that's acceptable, and still plan to put your best foot forward. Just because you're working from home doesn't mean we aren't working professionals. The jobs that we're hiring, and a lot of jobs that are open in professional settings, are really requiring a specific set of professional skills. And when we hire these candidates, we expect them to show up with that professional set of skills, which typically includes presence and being able to get credibility early on by the way you present yourself. Take the time to dress appropriate and look presentable. Be patient with the process of getting set up, or with others on the team that are having a bad technology day or week. Everybody's got to take a turn. Everybody's got to get bad technology day or bad technology week, and so you got to just roll with that. And then finally, understanding expectations. Really take initiative and be flexible in this area. Ask what the expectations of the role are. Ask how these might change if work is shifting. And then keep in mind that all organizations are figuring out the best way to sort of return to normal. Amy had mentioned everybody's figuring this out for the first time. We're all expecting everyone to be flexible. And so observe as much as you can when you can, and look for clues on how others are responding to change, so that you can help lead that change, and you can help be an advocate and a champion for that change. And so that people see you as just sort of as flexible and able to jump in where needed. So with that, I want to be able to share a brief video with you from one of our teammates, again, that was recently onboarded, and she's going to share her experience.
Can you all see my screen now?
I can.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and play.
Hi, I'm Jamie Hubbard. I'm a new employee at Cardinal Innovations Healthcare. I started in my position while everybody was working remote due to the pandemic. What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about my experience. So while I had experience working remote in the past, this is the first time that I started a new job, had a new team, and I, up until recently, hadn't even met my team in person. It was a little different, but I was determined that I was going to make this work. I was excited about my position. And let's face it, not having to deal with rush hour traffic was simply, or is simply, amazing. Now, let me share with you some of my strategies. I'm going to tell you about what was great, what was not so fun, and what I'd change. So the first week before I started, the IT department sent me a laptop and a mobile device. That was pretty phenomenal. Now, what I'll say is that may not be the reality for every organization. Some organizations are challenged right now with trying to get supplies to so many remote employees. My manager also sent me 1 week before my start date an onboarding plan. So between the onboarding plan and the IT equipment, I was good to go and very excited. Now, my first day, I got to attend a virtual orientation. by the HR team. It was pretty great. I was told information about the company, who we were, who we served, where to find important documents, how to register for benefits, things that really were key to me being successful. There was also a member of the IT department who was there on day one to help all new employees get logged on for the very first time. So I had someone virtually holding my hand. On my first day, my team also sent to me a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and that was pretty phenomenal. Now, let's move on to talk about how I got acclimated to the culture, how I learned my teammates, how I got used to stakeholders outside of my team. First and foremost, I set up meet and greets. And during those meet and greets, I made sure to turn on the video because it's really hard to understand body language when you're not face to face with someone. So a smile across the camera, that goes a long way. During those meet and greets, I asked personal questions, but I also asked questions about how I could partner with the person who was part of that meet and greet interview. I also made sure that I understood all of the meeting cadences. So what were the meetings that I needed to attend each week or bi-weekly or once a month? During the first 2 weeks, I was kind of quiet and I just observed. I also had, or still do, one-on-one meetings with my manager. Those are very helpful because what I do in those meetings, I also confirm some of the things that I observe in those other meetings to make sure that I'm on the right track. So the other thing that's helpful is to remember that although you're remote, you're still in a work environment. So while you don't need to wear a three-piece suit, you do want to make sure that you're presentable. After all, you don't want to have a moment. So let's talk about some of the things that maybe didn't work so well. So about week 3, I was ready to deliver my first assignment, and I was in a meeting with about 10 people. And what was happening is nobody could hear me. Come to find out, there was an issue with my sound card. At first I wanted to cry, then I was a little frustrated, and then I learned that, hey, I'm just going to laugh this off because it really was out of my control. What I did was I went and picked up some earbuds. I went to pick up a monitor. And then I finally decided I needed to reach out to IT, and that's how I determined that it was something due to my sound card. Now, let's talk about how that technology ended up working for me and not against me. I realized that there are definitely some things that you should be troubleshooting on your own, but there's nothing wrong with reaching out and getting help as you need it. And then last, and certainly not least, I guess the best advice that I'd have for you is take each day as it comes. We're all learning in this virtual environment. Nobody's perfect. Learn to laugh at yourself. Relax. Show up every day. Do the best that you can and enjoy your new role. All right, that's all I have for you. I hope you have a wonderful adventure, and I wish you all the luck. Thank you.
Thank you all. What a wonderful video to get a sort of firsthand experience of what it's like to begin a position in these very different and somewhat challenging times. And such good advice, and so good to learn about more about Cardinal Healthcare Innovations. Now we can go into the Q&A part of our presentation. So to do that, all 3 presenters and also all of you who are joining us today can click on the sessions button on the left-hand side. And you will see a box that says Q&A, and you can click on that and you will be in the Q&A room. In that room, up to 10 people can unmute their mics and cameras at once and ask our presenters questions. So let's make sure that we maximize this experience, and we have you unmute your cameras and mics and interact. And then when you're ready to be done with that, you can turn them off, and that will save a space for someone else to unmute. So thanks so much for this portion to you all, and we look forward to asking you lots of questions in the Q&A.